And I'm sorry, Piers, but to get up there and perform the whole show in Spanish is a middle finger to the rest of America. Who gives a damn that we have 40 million Spanish speakers in the United States? We have 310 million who don't speak a lick of Spanish. This is supposed to be a unifying event for the country.
What started as a halftime show debate became something far more combustible. The argument seemed simple at first. A flashy Super Bowl performance, some strong opinions, the usual noise. But it escalated fast, veering into questions of power, loyalty, and association with Jeffrey Epstein before most people had finished their halftime snacks. Megyn Kelly went off live, calling the all-Spanish performance a middle finger to America. She didn't stop there. She pivoted to who selected the performer, dragging Jay-Z's alleged Epstein connections into the conversation and widening the blast radius considerably. Her core argument leaned on numbers. 40 million Spanish speakers versus 310 million Americans who don't speak the language. She rejected the Black national anthem, warned that Britain had already lost its culture, and framed the whole performance as an act of deliberate exclusion. Piers Morgan pushed back, noting that Trump himself plays Italian opera at rallies and questioning why a language was suddenly cause for alarm. None of it slowed the momentum. Trump had already posted that the show was one of the worst ever within minutes of it ending, saying no one could understand the performer. The reaction was instant, loud, and oddly synchronized. On the surface, the story looks straightforward. A Spanish-language halftime show airs. A conservative host objects. A British interviewer counters. And the internet runs with it. But that framing collapses under any real scrutiny. This was never about melody or staging. It was about ownership. Who the Super Bowl belongs to, whose language gets to fill that stage, and who decides.
The criticism of the whole thing is that he sang in a language spoken by 60 million Americans, including the Secretary of State. Is that a problem? Like I said, the president used to play Pavarotti's Nessun Dorma at his campaign rallies. It even played at the end of the emotional 2024 RNC as Trump accepted his nomination just days after being shot. Nessun Dorma, to remind you, is entirely in Italian.
The moment Kelly turned it into a census argument, the conversation stopped being about preference and started sounding like enforcement, when unity becomes a numbers game and guilt by association gets deployed in the same breath. The question worth asking is why now, and who benefits from lighting that particular fuse? Kelly doesn't stop at language. She expands a perimeter steadily, folding in her rejection of the Black national anthem, dismissing the idea that a performance rooted in Puerto Rican pride has any place on that stage, and warning that Britain already lost its culture by not holding the line. That last point isn't a passing comment. It's a cautionary tale, dropped deliberately mid-debate to signal where this road leads. The numbers keep coming back. 310 million versus 40 million. Repeated like a mandate. The logic underneath.
What is the national language, officially the national language of the United States of America?
I mean, English. And there's been a push for many years to make it an official,
you don't have one.
Documented thing.
You don't have one.
If you would have let me finish my comment, I would have pointed that out, that people have been pushing to make it official.
This is straightforward and worth naming plainly. Majority comprehension equals cultural legitimacy. If most people can't understand it, it doesn't belong there. Piers introduces a detail that quietly destabilizes the entire premise. There is no federal law establishing English as the official language of the United States. An executive order in early 2025 may attempt to designate it as such, but an executive order is not a statute, and the distinction matters. Rather than settling the argument, that clarification sharpens attention in the room. Then he lands a harder punch. Trump has played Italian opera at campaign rallies and featured it at the 2024 Republican National Convention. The crowd loved it. Nobody called it a middle finger to America. The inconsistency is glaring. A foreign language
American event. Football, that kind of football, is ours. They call it American football. And the halftime show and everything around it needs to stay quintessentially American. Not Spanish, not Muslim, not anything other than good old-fashioned American apple pie. There should be a meatloaf, maybe some fried chicken, and an English-speaking performer. That's what the Super Bowl
becomes culturally enriching in one arena and practically treasonous in another, depending entirely on who's performing and for whom. That contradiction doesn't get addressed. It gets bypassed, and the conversation moves on as though it was never said. This is where the argument stops holding together. Kelly eventually concedes that the performance itself isn't the real offense. The problem is a performer. Bad Bunny criticized immigration crackdowns, made pointed references at the Grammys on February 1st, and has consistently voiced support for Latino communities. That history becomes a trigger. The halftime stage transforms into a loyalty checkpoint, and the argument shifts accordingly from "I can't understand the lyrics" to "he doesn't love this country." That move is not accidental.
We don't need a black national anthem. We don't need a Spanish-speaking, non-English performer, and we don't need an ICE or America hater featured as our primetime entertainment.
It is deliberate. From there, the charge becomes ideological contamination. By Monday morning, conservative commentators are running demographic math on air, questioning Puerto Rican heritage, arguing that Latin Americans contribute nothing to the NFL's cultural orbit, and calculating percentages as though belonging is something you earn by spreadsheet. Greg Gutfeld throws out population figures. Matt Walsh questions whether Latinos have any legitimate place in the sports world at all. The chorus stays on message. What emerges underneath all of it is a single claim, repeated in different registers. This stage belongs to us. But that sentence only works if you never have it defined who is actually.
A certain male gesture is coming to mind, but I'm not sure I can do it on this show. No, it wasn't about what he was actually going to do during the middle of the Super Bowl performance. It's about him. It's about him being chosen as the Super Bowl performer, somebody who's been an outspoken critic, of course, of the Trump administration and of.
And nobody in that conversation seems eager to try. The borders of belonging stay deliberately vague, which is precisely what makes him so effective as a weapon. Then the name drop detonates. Kelly pivots to Jay-Z, describing him as the person who, for some reason, holds the power to decide who performs at the Super Bowl. The phrasing is casual, almost offhand, but it carries considerable weight. It's not a secret that Rock Nation has been involved in shaping halftime talent since the NFL formalized that partnership years ago.
As we've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton and President.
The relationship is documented and publicly known. What escalates the moment is the insinuation layered on top of it that this gatekeeping is ideologically motivated. And then, before that claim could even settle, she folded a reference to Jay-Z's alleged friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The tone shifts immediately. What was a cultural dispute becomes scandal adjacency, and the transition is seamless. No evidence is presented in that moment. None needs to be. The association is the point. The stain is the argument. The context makes the timing harder to dismiss as coincidence. By 2025, the Epstein files are already deep in public circulation, with millions of pages and thousands of videos being processed by the Justice Department. The conversation around those files is charged, unresolved, and spreading. Dropping that name into a halftime show debate doesn't happen in a vacuum. The environment is combustible, and striking a match in that atmosphere is not an accident. It is a calculated escalation dressed as a passing remark. What started as a halftime show debate became something far more combustible. The argument seemed simple at first. A flashy Super Bowl performance, some strong opinions, the usual noise. But it escalated fast, veering into questions of power, loyalty, and association with Jeffrey Epstein.
This just broke moments ago. The Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We're getting dribs and drabs of this, and we had some pictures already, and here's some. There are some that show Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, and others. None of the released images depicts any misconduct. None is believed to depict underage girls. It was not immediately clear when or where they were.
Before most people had finished their halftime snacks, Megyn Kelly went off live, calling the all-Spanish performance a middle finger to America. She didn't stop there. She pivoted to who selected the performer, dragging Jay-Z's alleged Epstein connections into the conversation and widening the blast radius considerably. Her core argument leaned on numbers. 40 million Spanish speakers versus 310 million Americans who don't speak the language. She rejected the black national anthem, warned that Britain had already lost its culture, and framed the whole performance as an act of deliberate exclusion. Piers Morgan pushed back, noting that Trump himself plays Italian opera at rallies and questioning why a language was suddenly cause for alarm. None of it slowed the momentum. Trump had already posted that the show was one of the worst ever within minutes of it ending, saying no one could understand the performer. The reaction was instant, loud, and oddly synchronized. On the surface, the story looks straightforward. A Spanish-language halftime show airs. A conservative host objects. A British interviewer counters. And the internet runs with it. But that framing collapses